to do that. Susan's watching her granddaughter today, so she may or may not join us this morning, unfortunately. But well, I hope her time with her granddaughter is beautiful as well. Other questions, guys, as we wrap up our final week here?
No, I just have a thought. A thought. It's not really a question, but I thought the prayer at the beginning was so special. Especially the line that said, "It really sums up this: that we might pour out towards others what you have poured into us," and that's really kind of what it's about. And so I just thought that prayer was very meaningful.
Amen. Thanks for sharing that with us. I think that makes my heart happy to even think of that beautiful imagery. I think of each of our cups overflowing and us continuing to pour out into others.
Carlos, I wanted to share something. I didn't know, for one, who my allies were going to be, or even where I was going to start this program. I feel like God just led me to get recertified again after several years, not having any plan in place. Still may not, but I was at my Thursday morning Bible study, and we're doing the Messiah through the feast, and we were on the feast of first fruits. And just in talking about the first fruits led into a comment about this, and I even made the comment of, I'm going to be kind of praying where this leads. Before it was over, I had all these women wanting to volunteer to help, and the chairperson of the women's committee said, let's make this our project. This is what we can do. And so we will be starting this as soon as we can get it in the works, where I didn't even know where we're going, and now we're at the end, and these women embraced it. And when I said I would need allies, they started raising their hand. I want to. So I didn't even have to go beg anybody. They just came. So what a blessing. And I wanted to share it, and we'll probably try to do this through some when I say organization, the housing authority locally here in a mutual location. So it looks like we'll have a plan going here before long.
Amen. That is so exciting, Lisa. Thanks for sharing that. That's just so encouraging to me to hear, the unsureness of pulling this off, and just to see the way God moves people's hearts to be able to pull this is so powerful.
Yeah. That's so good. Yeah.
That's super encouraging, Lisa. That's amazing.
Thank
God
you
for that.
Absolutely. It was just as if it finished, and he laid it out there right before. So hopefully we'll kick off something the first of the year with this.
Yay. This is so good. This is really good to hear, because Carlos and I want to give you best practices, things that we have done to get our group started, and talk about what's entailed in getting a group going. So we want to share a little bit about that this morning. So what's it like to pull it off, And Carlos and I do things a little different because of his setting up at the university and what they do. So I'm going to share what I do in my group. And I want to talk about, there's a lot going forward, getting your group together. So there's a lot of like planning ahead of time. Like Lisa, for you to talk about that right now with allies, that's what it takes. Like you're just having conversations with people, and then people get excited about it. And that's what I did. I was telling people about faith and finances. I had done a grassroots and had no idea. I jumped in 10 days after I was trained as a facilitator, because I was trained in the early spring. And I knew that if I waited till the fall, I would never do it. So I just jumped in with I think I had, which I don't recommend this, but 25 people that had been walking with me with Chalmers books, and we had read When Helping Hurts, and we were just really in this mode. And so we all jumped in and got some folks from our inner city that we partner with to come and be part of our participants and all. And so that was my first group, but I had no idea what that was going to be like. We needed to have childcare and food. How did we want to make that? We read like recipes and all of that, which was really good. How do I recruit? I mean, I just kind of did it on the fly in the beginning. I think, Lisa, what you were sharing was so good. And the way that Chalmers has led us here to give us these steps into, this is what you do, this is your next step. So I really want to encourage you to read through the material again, have that, and start talking to people about it, because you're going to get people that, and I know, John, I know you talked about this, that more in your group or your church are people that probably would lean toward a different kind of financial help versus like the lower income. And that was my church as well. But what I found, and I want to encourage you, as I was thinking I was going to reach out to the housing right down the street from us, and we have low income all around us. And it was not like that. At first it was reaching out, but I found in my own church, like low to mid income in my own church family wanted to come and take the course. And I was thinking they would want to become the allies. And they really just were so in debt with credit cards, never had learned how to budget. So they grew so much. There was so much blossoming to see them come in and take this course. And then I had people that loved what we did. I scrambled the first time because I just jumped right in. So with food and everything, it's like, oh my gosh, I need to make a safe environment, but I want it to be where people can bring their families, and because I have a large budget in my church, I was able to just say, we're charging $20 across the board. We did 30 for couples, 20 for singles, and everybody had skin in the game. Though it cost us more than that to really pull off a class, we didn't want money to be deter people from coming and joining. And so we had folks that, like a couple times on general relief, that just didn't have that $20, but then $5 they paid something. And then she ended up serving in our church, doing worship folder stuff and all of that. So that was really fun to see, that. But you do have to think about food and childcare. Do you offer it? In my church, we have to pay childcare workers by law. So we're not like some of the rural churches that could have just their high school kids come and take care of them. We can't do that there. So we have a lot more restrictions in that way. And then just preparing to have your materials ready, and, your sign-up sheets, and who's going to email. Like I've done all the emailing to everybody, but what people started doing is they heard what we were doing in Faith and Finances. And I asked people that like to cook, would you make the meals? So we have home cooked meals. They loved it so much. And then they ended up recruiting others. So every week we had a home cooked meal for families. They brought their kids to our classroom, and then they would take them across the street to our childcare, and they were cared for over there while we did class. So and then with allies, I think we might talk a little bit more. I want to say this up front. I would rather have no allies than bad allies, and several of us that have been trainers and all feel the same way, and facilitators, because I thought in the beginning, if I got someone in that really knew finances, they were going to be great. But then they had no people skills. They didn't really care about caring for people. They just wanted someone, they just wanted someone to become like them, no matter how much I tried to say, hey, we're all learners together. So I grew into that, saying, listening to people, listening to their heart. They wanted to be allies. They'd approach me at church. It's like, tell me your background. What's your background of working with people? living in poverty, materially poor, people that are spiritually poor. What does that look like for you? You know, and then really gauging people that way to let them come in. And if I didn't think they would be right for an ally, I would say, I tell people, why don't you just go through the class, come through it with me, you know, and see what this is like and see if this is something that you would like to do. And next time around, we can get you in. And then connecting them, I connect them about 3 weeks in, because it works organically. So I have participants and allies, and I explain to the allies what they're going to be doing, and that it's an ongoing support. So as much as you can, be in class weekly. And by the 3rd week, I watch people like in this organic way of just how it works. Like someone will be taught, like a Brad will be talking to a Sam, and I see them keep connecting, and Brad is my ally and Sam is one of the participants. So I'll go to Sam and say, hey, I see you're talking to Brad a lot. Are you comfortable with him? Would you like him to be your ally? I would go to Brad and say, hey, you're really connecting. How would this work for you? And then I connect the two of them that way. Or if I have more women in the group and I have male allies, then I ask the allies, I set this up ahead of time. Even if the spouse isn't coming in, would you do this as a couple? You know, so that's how that's some of my best practices of getting things prepared and ready. And then the last night we do a big graduation, but thought I could turn it over to you, Carlos, if you want to add to that and how you do it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So would you say that your allies are most of the, or almost all of the time, or all of the time, people that you would say are doing well financially and are good with managing their money? Or do you sometimes pair up two people that are at the same stage of learning?
Well, I think Chalmers really encourages us to have allies that, you know, have been doing well financially for the last few years. I can tell you this, I've had people go through the course that more mid-income folks that came through, and they just needed to learn the basics, and then they came back around and became some of my best allies, you know.
Okay.
So I mean, and I have found that with others that have just really struggled, and they just grow so much. They grasp the concepts and the relational side and the transformation that God does in them, and then they walk alongside. So I let them, and then I just kind of fit people together. Yeah, does that help answer your question? But I want to say this, because I know a lot of you noted this last time in your post, that I have never had in my course anybody come through with an ally with them. So I haven't had people, but I know Carlos has a lot to share about that. So I'm gonna let him take it.
Well, I just say, like, I think your idea is great, Jody, right? But I think that would be more like peer-to-peer learning. I think they're building, you guys hear us talk about the word community all the time, and that's really what they're building. And so if they're able to work together, whether it's keeping each other accountable, part of, you know, the lessons throughout Faith and Finances is finding someone to keep them accountable on their spending plan, on tracking their income and expenses. And so, you know, it definitely could be another person in the course. But I think to Marcia's point there, an ally would be somebody who's a little bit more stable, who can walk with them. We have had graduates of the program who come back and then become allies. You know, I'd say a couple months after they complete the program, once they feel like they're in a good place. You know, that's one thing, is that multiplying effect of a trainer of trainers, of a facilitator training, is people want to come back and give back of how much they received from the program. So I think both of those are possibilities, absolutely. A couple things I think I'd add on, add on to Marcia here is, like, I think when we think of pulling off a Faith and Finances class, if it's a physical course, you're going to need a space, right? I think that's going to be part of the first step. Are you going to do it at a church building? Are you going to do it at a community center? We have folks who do it at their homes, in their backyards, if they have a big enough space, right? I think getting a good feel of how comfortable your participants are and where, right? If you're doing it with your own church constituents, your congregants, then I think it would make sense to do it at church. If your community members feel good about coming onto church, if they've never been to church, I think that's also, a consideration. We've seen churches who, realize, okay, these folks have never been to church, but they're interested in this, so we're going to find a little bit more of a neutral site, right? It just depends on the facilitator, on the church, on how they feel their participants would engage in. So I think there's a varying strategy. Again, we run ours, we run courses at the university, we run at local community centers, at housing authority sites and Section 8 housing, in churches, at nonprofits, and some businesses run it for their own employees. So there's various different contexts that you can plug into. On the flip side, current reality, right? A lot of people aren't comfortable yet with gathering in person. So if you do online, you have, similar to our medium, you could use Zoom, right? You can use Teams, you can use GoToMeeting. There's a lot of different programs. I really like Zoom because of the breakout room feature, of how easy it is to use. I will note that you need an upgraded account if you're going to do it with more than 3 people to be able to do a session longer than 40 minutes. So I'd say talk to maybe your congregation or your nonprofit, wherever you're serving, if they will pay for it. If not, it's not a very big fee. I can't remember how much. I think it's like, someone can correct me, it's like $10 a month for an upgraded account.
I think I paid 15. I wonder though, if serving people that are in poverty, if it's likely that they would have access to a computer and reliable internet. And if not, do you have suggestions on how you would handle that? Do you have devices that you loan out? Do you have locations where people could go to that would have devices?
I mean, that's a great I think question. And what do we do here? We had a course that was set to run in our downtown, and most folks didn't have access to technology. And so they were trying to meet in person, and that didn't quite work out. And so in terms of loaning technology, I mean, I think that would depend on the resources of the congregation. If they have stuff to loan out, I see smartphones, library computers, it is hard. We have some sites that do have like computer labs, but even then you're still gathering in a space, right? And at that, you might as well just gather in person if you're going to gather to virtually gather. So unfortunately, I don't necessarily have a great suggestion there, just because I haven't done anything to that degree. Marcia, or even Tabitha, or anyone else, do you guys maybe have a suggestion here?
I see that Tabitha just suggested masks and 6 feet apart. And I've been thinking about this as well, because we've been, meeting one-on-one and in groups on Zoom or Google Duo to tutor English and continue the refugee ministry. But for faith and finances, I've been wondering if we could pull it off on Zoom, or if we could do a combination, kind of a hybrid, where since a large population is living very close together of our participants, then maybe they're right near the church that sponsors the ministry, then maybe there'd be an opportunity to be very careful and masked and socially distant in person, but then also give us flexibility to have participants Zooming, even a facilitator Zooming, or, allies. So I've been kind of picturing it's going to be complicated, and might even be a hybrid of the two, in person and virtual.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely keep talking about this at the Chalmers Center, because it's fine for middle-class folks who have good Wi-Fi and devices, but how do we not let people slip through the cracks because they're in redlined areas as far as home loans, but also Wi-Fi redlining. I would say Catherine, your ideas are good. My personal experience is that the hardest thing to do is combine digital with in person. And it actually either go all digital or find a way to go in person is my personal experience. But you have to do it. My husband teaches at Covenant College. He has an in-person class, but there is a video camera. I think they have a lesser experience because he's not necessarily teaching to the video. But yeah, we're all in the same tight spot.
Good point. Good point. They actually, at my son's school, they said, okay, virtual students just watch the recordings of the classes later because it was so disruptive to the in-person class.
I tried it and it's really hard because, yeah, it's hard.
One of our folks had mentioned, one of our trainers had mentioned they were going to, because we were talking about it, how do we facilitate during this time? And they were going to meet their first group, the first class outside in a park, just so you could be together face to face, but then turn around and go back on and do it virtually. So I don't know. I'm trying to work it out with the housing authority down the street from our church right now. They keep thinking, oh, we can't do anything until, January, or until we come out of COVID. And I go, no, I think we can. So we're trying to figure out how to use their garden space and use it for their folks that are paying rent late. That's what they're thinking right now.
Yeah,
but it's all in the air, Yeah.
For our northern friends, it's going to have to be gyms, school gyms, and spread out in church sanctuaries. I mean, it's a different sort of thing.
Absolutely.
And it's very against Chalmers-y stuff, right? Because you want to build relationships and closeness. So this is definitely less good to.
Yeah, we were even talking about like, how do you do a meal unless everybody, because I've had some of my former students asking me, can we do this again? Can we come back? Can we share our experience with new people and all? And then we were kind of brainstorming. It's like, well, everybody's at home. They've got their kids. That'll be disruptive, but a good disruption in a sense. We're all for that. But then just bring your meal to the table. Bring your families to the table. Let's still do our 6 to 6:30. We're going to have a meal together. And, whatever. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, because I get a lot of the young families coming too. So what happens with the kids then when you're trying to do it virtually? And I really encourage couples to come together. So I'm not there yet. I'm with you guys. I'm just right there with you trying to figure it out. Yeah.
I think from an adult learning perspective, so we have a department for online learning called the Center for Online Learning, and they really advise against doing video and in person at the same time. They have found it's just not effective. And so like all our classes have to be online. There are a few courses like labs that can be in person for us, but they have found that it's just, I think Tabitha mentioned, it's too disruptive. And at the same time, I think the attention's just not, if you will, paid to the people who are streaming via video. So from a university standpoint and an andragogy just topic here, I think my personal inclination would be to advise against doing a hybrid model. But again, I think if you find it works for your situation, great. But I think just based on research and what we have heard, it just doesn't work well. But again, this is the world that we're in right now. And we're going to keep navigating. So as you guys find resources, I think we maybe have like an email ongoing group chat. If you guys have a resource to share, definitely forward it on. Or if you forward it to myself or Marcia, we'll be happy to pass it on to everyone. And I think you guys started talking about food, right? We have courses right now that are just doing individually packaged meals for each person. That way you don't have this potluck style and everybody just digging their hands into casserole and all the above. It's crazy to think what a world we lived in a year ago compared to now, right? And all these, you bring in things like potlucks and, people's kitchens. We have different churches that have commercial kitchens essentially that can produce this food safely. And I think that the cleanliness, I think, lends to keeping the participants safe. And so, but again, I think that's going to be up to the comfortability of your context. We have other, not necessarily faith and finance courses, but different courses in the city that actually, one, either provide a $10 Chipotle gift card each night, whether they use it that night or not, doesn't necessarily matter, but at least it's a good gesture. Or you can DoorDash food. When we have, I sit as an overseer for our church, and they'll DoorDash food to us, but I always say it's too expensive to do that, right? And so I think it just depends, on your context. So get creative. I don't think you guys are necessarily hamstrung by that way, but there are a lot of options. Childcare, I think we talk about the three biggest barriers to faith and finances is food, childcare, and transportation. You're gonna find this and hear this from your participants. So childcare, that's another thing. We also have to pay our childcare folks. We can't necessarily have a volunteer. And so I think getting background checks done is really important. And then two, having like a roster sheet of folks that you can call on. As much as like we try, some churches have their own childcare workers that we just pull in, others don't. And so we have to have people ready on call. So say we have 2 folks for 10 children, all right, but one person calls out an hour before course, right? We have to have 2 or 3 people readily available to say, hey, will you be my on-call person? And so thinking, it's a terrible way to be, but even just in an organization in a nonprofit myself, I always have to think of what can go wrong and how do we protect ourselves against this. In the same way, I think your faith and finances courses, you're going to have some of that. Sure, you have some of these details down, just to save yourselves a little bit of stress and headache down the road. The you'll need for a course are your materials for faith and finances. So books and workbooks and facilitator manuals. So my hope is that this week you guys will each receive an email with your login credentials or an email to set up your login credentials. So then you can start ordering your materials. I know some of you guys really wanted to order your facilitator manuals. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible yet. But I think after today, all of you guys are officially cleared from Marsha and I standpoint, and it will just be Chalmers certifying you as a faith and finances facilitator. So well done, guys. So, but a couple days away from that, and happy to walk you guys through ordering materials again, since I know we haven't had much chance to do that, unfortunately, without you guys having your credentials. And then recruitment, that's another area that you guys will have to think about. If you're partnering with another agency, another church, another institution, definitely use their means of communication to recruit, but also, we've seen people pass out flyers door to door. We've seen emails, people use the Nextdoor, the Neighbors app to say, hey, this is happening at this local church. There's various different ways to get the word out these days. And so get creative. Lisa, did you have a question there?
Yes. Is there a number of participants that's a comfortable number to work with? When you start saying handing out, I can see, you might could do 10, 15 or so, but if you just get too many, you not get lost in the numbers.
That's such a great question. Marsha and I were actually talking about this last week in prepping for this call. Is, our sweet spot, we've really recommended our congregations to recruit between 8 to 15 folks in the class. One, I think after 15, it's hard to really give everyone attention or everyone to participate. Some people can pull it off. We haven't done it very well, so we recommend the 8 to 15 size. Couple things there. Attrition happens, right? People may participate for the first 2 to 3 weeks and then just stop showing up. I think, and there could be a lot to be said. There really is no one reason why people stop showing up, but it does happen. And so all of a sudden 8 becomes 6 or 5 or 15 becomes 12. So just know that it's not you. It does happen across all our courses. Yeah, great point. If they stop showing up, don't take it personally. It really isn't against you. I think one, it is a larger commitment in participating. Some people do show up and realize, wait, I'm in this for 12 weeks. Even though it says 12-week program on the flyer, it does happen. And other reasons, work schedules flip, childcare needs, different, I'd say, stresses happen. You know, I think trauma for us is a little, maybe for those who maybe are in a more middle class. Do you guys hear the train? Don't listen to the train. But
Is that your train, Carlos?
I'm
Is
sorry.
Is that train at your place?
Yeah.
It's so cool.
The joys of living in a city, guys. And so I think, yeah, again, I think 8 to 15. I think I lost my train of thought there. Overpowered by the train here.
You're talking about attrition.
Yes, attrition. And so just keep that in mind. I would say if you go down to 12 from 15 on week 3, don't try to recruit more folks. I think, you know, Marcia says if you're not here week 1, you can't come in. We usually say up to week 2 you can join, so you can miss the first class and join week 2. But after that, I think things have been shared, bonds have been created, community has been developed, and it's hard to introduce a new person to that. Not to say that it's not possible, it's just in our experience, it just doesn't help. I think the cohesion in the group deteriorates a little bit and then has to be built up again.
Carlos, is there a minimum number of participants in order to justify having the class?
You know, we try to get 10 at least for every course, but we have churches that like running with 5. All right, so just because it's really intimate, you can do it. It's manageable for one facilitator. I mean, that's another thing is I'd always recommend having a co-facilitator with you. I think 1, it gives you a chance to catch your breath. And 2, I think you guys can work together and build one brain, if you will, right? I think sometimes you do need some support in your work. And so I think it's important to have another person, but not everyone has that opportunity to work with somebody else. That's okay. So I think it just really depends, but I think it's comfortable for us. We see son, I think so. I totally cut that. Tell him he's being recorded, by the way.
We have our grandson here today and
grandson.
he's being distracted.
He's trying to make us laugh.
I love it. And so, yeah, I think those are those 2 questions. Is how small can a course be? I've seen it run with as little as 5. Marcia, would you say anything?
Yeah, I was going to say the only thing if you're, yeah, I've had it to where there's only been 6 and it makes it difficult for role play. So when you're doing the role play, it's like, oh, I'm going to have, and that's where we tell you guys, you know what? You have to be creative. You're just going to, some people might not show, a whole group of people may get the flu, you know, and they're just out and you have this whole night planned, your 90 minutes planned, and you're just going to have to shift. So I think in the smaller classes like that, because sometimes there's 7 in a role play, not often, but there are. So I think just thinking that, and then Carlos had mentioned that I don't let people in after the first week. I did the first course, and what I do is create a safe environment in the beginning that I want everybody to know that what's said in the room stays in the room. I talk about recovery because a lot of folks come from Celebrate Recovery into my course as well, you know, and so it's like they know what it's like for anonymity. And so I just really make that something really important that nobody gets shamed. We don't shame each other. If you hear something and it shocks you, try really hard not to react, you know, out loud, you know, and or say things. But I just really try to keep that, create that space in the first night. So when I did that that first time around when I first started, then we had, so it creates a safety, and I do the whole even Isaac role play in the beginning so people can see what this course is going to look like for 12 weeks. And then we do all this stuff where it's getting people to talk. And so it's like you already become this safety net of people in that first week. And then I had someone join that next week, and then everybody just shut down. So I decided back then, I'm not going to do this again. And that's just me. I don't let people in after the first class. And it's a standard that I hold, and it helps people be accountable to signing up on time too. So that's just something I do, like start on time, end on time, you know, and create that really safe place for everybody to be able to share at their own pace too. Yeah.
And I think along with that, Marcia, it's also like another question that pops up is how many classes can a person miss in a faith and finances course when we no longer give them, if you will, a certificate of completion? Right. I think one, you know, we use the word graduate, right? And then I think we give everyone a certificate in the sense that there's graduates, but then there's participants, right? And so we tell them, hey, if you want to come back for a graduation certificate, let's do this again. Just because at some point, like we let them miss 2 courses, and at 3 we feel like they missed too much. And so, but again, that's at your discrepancy. This is something that if you have allies, actually, Jody, I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question. Is that 18 to 15 participants plus 18 to 15 allies? You know, we usually, for us, don't have like a one ally per participant. Like one ally will take 2 or 3 people, right? And that's been possible. If you have, I mean, and we haven't had as much success recruiting as many allies as other congregations, right? And so if you are able to build a one-to-one, that's great. Our allies don't come every night to every faith and finances course. I think they come, I'd say every other course or every other night, but then they have their one-on-one sessions with the folks as, if you will, their own personal coach. But it's just, I mean, Martha, can you speak to your allies and how you've structured that?
Yeah, I used to try to match, like, so one ally to one person, but it just became so many people in the class that I really started seeing I have a group of allies that love doing this and walking alongside people. So they really have been coming back each time. And so it will be a couple that has 2 or 3 that they do as well. Yeah. And again, like I say, it's better to have no allies than a bad ally. You know, so you really want to vet your allies well, I think. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I think a question was, I think I saw in like the work life that you normally pair, you try to have more than one ally with a participant, right? And I guess that's ideal, but that's not the reality. Like,
Mhm.
right. So I was wondering how important it is to try to do that and have less participants, or is it more important to have more participants and just have one-on-one? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think this comes to maybe, I don't want to say preference, but in the sense of learning, right? I think you're building a foundation in the course, but then you're really grounding the learning in those one-on-one sessions, right? I think one, like we have, you know, we try to prep our one-on-one sessions as like coaching sessions, if you will. Building relationships, not to say, hey, I'm your coach, I'm your mentor, but hey, I'm walking with you. Here's some questions to help you explore what you're learning. How are you doing on your spending plan? Are you tracking your income expenses? Yes, we build this plan of attack for increasing your credit score, you know, and getting these off your credit history. You know, have you been doing these things, right? So there's a level of accountability to that. But, you know, ideally, you know, I know the curriculum may ask like in work life a 2-to-1 pairing or a 1-to-1 pairing, but that's not necessarily always feasible for different courses when it comes to recruiting. I know we couldn't do something like that because we just don't have that kind of success in recruiting allies. And so, I mean, Marcia, what would you say to that? I know you have a lot of experience with allies as well.
Yeah, I just think that what I do with my allies is just let them know in the beginning what they're getting into. This is what this course is really about. I did one major training for allies originally and had a workshop for after or a day on a Saturday. But just letting them know like how important it is to walk alongside people, not just during the class. My allies come. I tell them they don't have to come to every class, but if they do, they get to know participants better. And so what I found is they want to come and they want to be there. And so then they can say, oh God, like one of our pastors from the inner city was so cute. He wanted to come and he brought his whole group. And then one time they all disappeared. And it's like, where did they go? And I had a sergeant on the police department that was his ally. And so he's checking in with them to make sure it's okay. And it's like, oh yeah, someone got taken into trafficking. So we all had to go look for her. You know, I mean, it's just like things that you don't expect are going to happen, but it's because that he had that ally. So he's checking in with them. So, I mean, I think that's the thing, like letting my allies know we ask you to commit for a year, and then we've had them just go on and on with them because they build relationship. But you know, just check in with them, even if it's once a month through text, or you can have coffee or a meal together. Just stay connected and see how they're doing and keep encouraging them. So yeah.
So I think this brings, I think it's kind of not necessarily a transition, but a great point of reference is when we talk about allies, right? They're going to be walking with this person in the course and potentially longer than the course. I think the ally is going to be in this kind of crossroad of helping a person, right? Is I'm walking with this person, but I can't tell you how many times an ally has said, hey, this person has $10,000 of debt and I'm just going to pay it off for them, right? And I think the benevolence and I think the heart behind that is really great. I think one is when money gets involved between an ally and a participant, it can be very dicey, right? And so we necessarily don't caution as like, hey, you know, don't necessarily just pay off the debt, work with them. You know, what are small steps to building sustainable, you know, practices to pay off debt, to stay out of debt, to build an emergency savings account, right? And so I think this, you know, I think the heart is great. I hate to associate savior mentality in this, right? But I think the person wants to just save this person out of that debt, out of that poverty. But if, you know, we paid off today, but they are in debt, $10,000 debt 6 months later, you know, did we really do right by this person, right? So I'd really caution you on this, whether this is spoken outright from the beginning with your allies, right? I think you're trying to build a sustainable community. And if people have the means, great. You know, I don't want to say, you know, tell them no, don't ever give. But if they can build, you know, hey, I'm going to work with you on a personal, a private, no interest loan, right? I think like we had someone pay off someone. I spoke to someone last week that paid off somebody's debt, and the person took 3 years to pay them back. And I think they paid them back at like $45 every 6 months or something like that, until they finally saved up enough money to just pay the debt. And they weren't expecting any of this money back, right? But I think again is more about long-term development of this person, rehabilitating them in the sense of, hey, there's been brokenness with themselves, with God, with each other, with God's community. And in this, you're preserving the way, I think, ultimately their dignity and the way God created them to be. Right?
I think we also have to remember, and if you haven't read When Helping Hurts, you know, it could be that they're in this position because that's what somebody did for them before. They always just gave to them instead of teaching them how to handle it themselves. So that's a good book to go back and look at.
That's a really good point. And we have learned when we did helping without hurting through benevolence, we now have our allies will work through our benevolence program. And so when people come in and want money, it's always the same people same situation, a lot of times same script, different actor kind of thing. And so our allies are really good about walking alongside them, helping build a contract with them, but not giving. And that's part of like setting up your class in that first night too. And that's part of the curriculum. What are our goals? What are our class rules or whatever it is? Because I was telling Carlos, I thought one of my allies was paying for somebody, and I thought, oh shoot, I didn't tell them don't pay for their class fee. And what that person was really doing, the participant was running a fundraiser for her kid during class. And I'm going, oh, so let's add this to then our class rules. We don't fundraise, and so it's just trying to find those ways too, because I think I think there's absolutely every time I have had in the 10 times I have run my courses, that something happens in class and I'm going, I didn't see that coming. Like, I just didn't see that coming. And I always and I don't react. And afterwards, I have this one ally that's always with me, and we just look at each other and shake our heads going, we didn't see that one coming. And you just have to learn how to maneuver around things and all too. So yeah.
Those are all great points.
Sorry, what is the benevolence program you mentioned, Marcia?
Well, we have benevolence in our church for church family that has a need, like if they have a financial need and all. But a lot of times, and then I'm director of local outreach, so I have a compassion fund as well for people in the community. But we try to connect them with some of our community partners for utilities, things like that. But in our church, for folks that need money and they can't pay their rent or they can't pay their utilities or whatever it is, or they just landed on hard times, they're normally like Lisa was saying, it's the same people doing the same thing over and over again. So for us to continue to give to them isn't helping them. So we have a cap of what we do, but we also ask our allies that have been in faith and finances with us, if this is a person that keeps coming back, saying, we're going to help you this much. What part can you do? And so we have them have buy-in into what their need is. And so if they can pay so much, we'll help support them, but then they're going to sign a contract and they're going to walk alongside, our ally will walk alongside with them to get them to that place so they're not doing that same thing over and over again. So Chalmers' resource in that is huge. They have the book, Helping Without Hurting Through Church Benevolence, and it is so good. Yeah, it's really, really good. And Carlos put that in in the chat too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a great point. I think different churches have these benevolence funds to support people, whether it's for housing, whether it's for food, whether it's for bills, whether it's for utilities. There's a lot. So I think you bring up a great point, Marcia, is that people are asking for help, coaching the ally and saying, hey, maybe don't give, but so funnel them through the benevolence fund, right? If you need that kind of support. It's not, yeah. Go ahead, Marcia.
I'm just going to say, Tabitha mentioned Chalmers has their online benevolence course right now that you guys can. Tabitha, did you want to say something on that?
No, Carlos put in the link.
Oh, Carlos did that. Sorry, Carlos. I thought Tabitha did. Sorry. Yeah, it's really good.
No, I mentioned the class, but Carlos did the useful thing and put in the link.
But I guess, again, I think it's not necessarily about just, I guess I just stress you guys, don't think about it in terms of debt. Think of it as sustainable practice, right? I think we're trying to help build skills for the long term, because, their debt, okay, so let's say their skills are transferable. If they ever leave their community and move somewhere else, that's something that they'll have with them forever, right? And so they won't necessarily have the community where they were, but you definitely want to set them up for success in the long term. So just keep that in mind. Let's see. I think another thing here on my notes, I'd say is, I think shifting gears here is creating a safe environment, right? We talk about building community. We talk about trauma being different. I mean, having a gal who's fridge went out, and that's why she missed class one night. And in my mind, I was like, well, your fridge went out, just put it in buckets and get a repairman to fix it, right? Or put it in an ice chest. But what happened is, she gets her check once a month, and she had bought her groceries for the month there, right? And she couldn't afford for any of it to go bad. Low income gal, right? And so, but me being a middle class person here doesn't necessarily think of that, right? And so I think her experience, and hey, I have 34 kids, and so I need to feed them all, and make sure we get through the month with this food, right? And so I think there's going to be different situations that arise here. And so again, building a space that's safe for them to share those kind of traumas and saying, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, rather than them being shamed to, hey, why didn't you show up? Right. Okay, well, I'm just not going to come back anymore. Right. I think you want to be able to really build, I'd say, that cohesion with them to where they want to be there, but even if they can't, or something's preventing them from being there, they'll communicate that with you, so you know how to support them in the process. Or again, allies and peer-to-peer mentorship, as we talked about before. We talk about the Vegas rule all the time, is what happens in our course stays in the course. Be ready for tears. You'll probably cry yourselves. I cry with my kids all the time, right? And so sometimes in course I get a little choked up at times too. And so like I expect that for me as people are sharing stuff, but those things are really hurtful. They're coming from a place of hurt, a place of pain or trauma, and just for them to be able to share that, I think is really important. And so you don't want Marsha going out there and talking about, oh, did you hear what Carlos went through? That's why Carlos is the way he is, right? Like that's not necessarily what we want in a group. And so really stressing, hey, we are a safe space here. Let's build community together. So no shame in the group, right? Like I think of courses when people say, hey, I went to a payday lender 3 months ago, and someone says, well, why would you ever do that, right? Well, that doesn't really help in this situation. So let's see how we can help this person not go back to payday lending, and get out of the situation, right? What other options exist rather than going to a payday lender? I think we don't want to cast shame in a group. Also valuing different values and cultures. I think, Marcia, you talk about this in allies, is sometimes you have maybe a rigid ally who says, I just want them to become like me, but doesn't necessarily see the value in a different culture, right? Or a different, just I'd say, a different set of values that someone may have in the way they spend the money, that maybe, whether they save too much or not enough. I think people are just created differently. And so you definitely want to be able to value, even though you might not necessarily do it that way, right? In my culture, people save up money and to throw really big 2-year-old parties, right? And why would you spend that much money on a 2-year-old party, right? What someone would say, they're not going to remember this party anyway. But on the flip side, right, I think that's where community is built for folks. That is a sense of celebration in a culture full of so much lament. And so how do you, on this side, find value in that, right? I think it's easy to say, hey, don't do this, don't do that. Oh no, are we losing Tabitha? Tabitha, it was a joy to have you. I'm sorry this went a little long, but it's good to have you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tabitha. We'll talk soon. I'm realizing we're almost at time, guys, so I'll make sure to not take too much more time, but make sure we're wrapping up. I just want to make sure I'm communicating these. And the last thing we wrote here is bring tissues. Again, tears are going to be shed. I think emotions are going to be felt, especially with something as deep, impactful, and potentially hurtful as money and finances in people's lives. So be prepared for something like that.
Can I say something on that really quick?
Absolutely.
You know what? I would encourage you guys in that because it's happened several times with me to be in the moment with the person with the tears. Like, don't worry that, oh my gosh, I've got to get to the next task. Now they're crying. How am I going to deal with this? You will learn how to be in that with that person and be able to lead out of that. And as you do that, it helps everybody else lean in too, because it can be uncomfortable for people when they see someone start crying. They're not used to that, or a guy tearing up and getting choked up. But if you stay in the moment with that person, it says so much, not only to that person, but to the rest of your class as well. So don't freak out. You're not going to get your class done. It will work. It all works out.
Yeah, I mean, in my last class that I facilitated, I have a 6'5", 6'6" cowboy with his boots and his, his cowboy hat on, and he just breaking down in tears as a single dad and the things he's facing. I just never would, I think stereotyping, I wouldn't have expected that, but it was just a very real pain for him. And so sitting in that space with him, you're gonna have people of all walks of life in those situations. And I think ultimately, too, the other thing I'd stress to you guys as you guys are building partnerships in the community is, under promising and over delivering. Faith and Finances has been so transformational in our communities. We've seen payday lenders go out of business. We've seen people get out of debt. We've seen generational shackles broken, right? But I will never go and promise this to every single church and say this will solve your problems, because people will expect that, and if it doesn't deliver that, I mean, in year one, we've been at this almost 8 years now, and so we've seen the needle slowly move. And so as you're building partnerships, just let them know this is what we're looking to do, right? This is, we walk with folks. We look to build new, I'd say, skill sets. We look at, I think you can communicate different ways and ultimately building community to help support them. And people will understand the value in that. But again, I don't want you guys to be ambassadors of Faith and Finances and saying, hey, we're going to solve every single financial problem in the community and transform this community right away. Unrealistic, but also I think it happens slowly. So just be careful with that. I think ultimately Faith and Finances is the start of a journey to financial well-being. I think that's the end goal here. And ultimately, I won't speak for Chalmers, right? But Chalmers isn't just about building better practices, isn't getting, saving people from poverty. I think ultimately it's pointing them back to the Lord. And that's really what the curriculum is about. And so you guys will see that, even though I won't outright say that in the curriculum, you guys will see just the gospel woven in really beautifully throughout the curriculum. And I'm really thankful for that. I'm trying to think. And yeah, I think ultimately I'd say be encouraged in the work that you're doing. Reach out for help in the process if you have questions. We're all here. We're really, Marcia and myself are part of a even bigger just fellowship of Faith and Finances facilitators, where we're always asking for help and new ideas, because I think I've learned a lot from you guys in these last 6 weeks and the things that you guys have shared. Hopefully you guys have learned some stuff from Marcia and I. And with that, I think I'd ask any maybe final questions from you guys, something that maybe we left out or something you're still wondering about.
Are we able to access books like the When Helping Hurts on the Chalmers site, or is that something we just purchase on Amazon or something?
Yeah, I think you'll just purchase a book. I don't think, I'm pretty sure it's not, so I won't say, but I'll look into that for you, Eunice, to see if there's anything like that, but I have not seen it posted, just like a PDF version or anything. But I'd say it's a good read to just have in your library, especially as I'd say for myself, when I'm first getting into the work in community benefit organizations, was so foundational for me. And so as you meet people who want to come into the work, and I meet people, there's 2 books that I really recommend, and it's When Helping Hurts and Pedagogy of the Oppressed. I think both of those have been so foundational, both in facilitation and teaching, but also just working with people in low to moderate incomes.
What was the second?
It's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. by Paulo Freire. I thought I had that book somewhere here. I think also we'll send you guys another follow-up email with that book. Oh yeah, there it is. Are you reading that book right now, Marcia?
I just started. I have to have a dictionary for the words in just the beginning intro. It's like, wait, what's that mean? What's that mean? That's really good, you guys.
But I'd say I think Paulo Freire was a social psychologist, if I remember the right terminology correctly. But he gets it. He just got it from, I think, an intellectual standpoint, and really communicating, how adults learn, especially those who come from oppressed context, from contexts of poverty and low to moderate income.
I want to say this too with allies for me. I have several of the When Helping Hurts books in my office, and I have them read that before like if I don't know them and they want to be a part of it and they want to be an ally and they've heard about it, it's like, take this book, read it, then come back and we'll have a discussion, because I really want to make sure that they know what they're getting into and what walking with the poor really means. Yeah.
Good point. Lisa, do you have a question?
Yes, I've got one question just on, like, when have you seen a time, if you're going to start at the first of the year, the first quarter, when is a good time versus not?
That's a great question. Do you mean for facilitating a course?
Yes, to start the course.
Yeah, so I'd say from I think one on a university calendar, but also just in general, we've done, if we're going to start a course, it's middle of August, I think towards like, I'd say middle of September, I think, or maybe towards the end of September as an ideal start date. If you're doing a full 12-week course, I think you run into Thanksgiving, you run into Christmas, you run into that lull of, a turkey hangover between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and people just aren't engaged. Not personal against you. It's just the way it is, right? I think in the spring, we're looking at like a middle January start to like, I'd say you can run up all the way to like end of March, right? Once you get into like the June, Julys, I think you'll start feeling people fall off. Yeah, the only thing that really happens in between is spring break, right? People get their kids. They have their kids all the time right now in a lot of contexts, right? But traditionally, spring break, people just want to cut loose for that week. They go on vacation, they have a staycation, whatever it is, so that they're a little checked out. Marcia, what would you say here?
Yeah.
You're muted, Marcia.
Sorry, we were doing two in the past. Carlos, what the time frame that Carlos was sharing, but then we found people really come out in January after the holidays. They're really hurting and wanting something. So we started doing just one a year. For the last couple of years, I've done that, just one a year, and we do it mid-January. And then before Easter and spring break and all of that. So it ends. So we'll do the 12, 11, whatever, how many weeks we do it. Yeah. So.
A really good question, though. But again, your context will be different. If summer works well and people engage in summer, great. But for our context, it hasn't really worked. And so summer is usually an off month or off season for us.
And Phyllis and John, I'll make sure I connect. I'll send you an email to Pastor Mike that has the Garage Church, and I think it's Arkansas where he is. But they do the, can't remember what the name of the program is with the prisoners coming out. And so I think that's something you asked about originally.
It's called Next Step.
Yes, and they do that. And they pair faith and finances with that really well. So I will send you his email and introduce you guys.
Okay.
For a
Thank you.
resource.
Other questions, guys? And if anything, Marcia and I are available. We try to make ourselves as available as possible. Email, text, phone call, all the above works. Let's set up a Zoom call, have some virtual coffee. As you guys get planned, you know, again, we want to help. So definitely let us walk with you guys. Are we losing Eunice too? Sorry, Eunice. It's so good to have you. Thanks for being here.
I
Bye.
hopefully we'll keep in touch somehow.
Absolutely. So as you guys get planned for your workshops, if you just want another brain as a sounding board or someone to help you plan, you know, we're here. A lot of the Chalmers team is available as well. But again, you guys have related with us the most, so we definitely would love to keep supporting you guys in the process.
Yeah. You will never be alone. Honestly, you don't have to do this alone.
Thank you guys so much. It has been such a joy. I have looked forward to this every week, and I'm so excited, and I'll definitely have lots of questions and be in touch as things progress.
So cool.
Forward to it, Catherine. All right, friends. Well, I pray that the Lord's face shine upon each of you, that you continue to feel his light, his warmth in abundance. And then as we go into our communities, that you continue to proclaim the good name of the Lord. So thanks for relating to us. Thanks for being friends in this process. And truly, we value each and every one of you.
Yeah. Amen to that.
God bless you.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now for everything.
God bless you, really. It's been wonderful.
Been a great journey, huh?
Yep. And
I'm
yes,
happy to join in any of y'all's meeting if you need somebody to sound
With an
different.
accent.
Count on it.
I love it.
me too. We can bring our Minnesota accent.
That's
Yes,
right.
please.
Yes.
We'll bring Georgia.
That's
There you
right.
go. Wonderful. Sounds great.
Well,
Can't
thank
wait.
you.
All right.
Going
Thank you.
chat soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.